I thought today we could do a little chitty chat and talk about my content to client or creator to consultant pipeline, whichever phrase that you want to use, because I get asked about it so much in podcasts and different conversations that I have, even like networking and getting coffee with people. I'm regularly asked about this workflow and how I even still use it strategically today. How I got my start, I think, is really important to first touch on. So, before I became a certified Notion consultant, I was in the nonprofit space. You guys know this. I did nonprofit business development, compliance, data, databases. I also basically had like a full second career in that job too, where I did media and marketing and all of this, right? So when I went out on my own, I didn't really understand funnels. I didn't really understand how to bring people in. And if you guys are aware of my first freelance business, is that I was doing design, I was doing video, I was doing websites, branding, all that jazz, doing social campaigns, and I was 100% referral, okay? I did not market my first 3 years in business. I literally lived off of my portfolio, and that just happened to work for me. I had dabbled in some courses and things that honestly, like, really didn't sell. I also like wasn't really sure where I wanted to sit. And if we've ever had conversations together, then you know how conflicted for my first couple of years I was, because I was getting clients, right, who were in nonprofit, who were in impact, who were, really creating great businesses. But then I was getting a ton of freelancers who wanted my insight, who wanted, to learn about business from me. And so I was like creating content for both places, and like nothing was converting. And luckily I had referrals. So that was like the first 3 years. All right. Flash forward. Oh my God, I cannot talk. I started to hate the platform that I was doing project management on. I was an avid Trello user. I loved Atlassian. I lived and breathed by Taco, their mascot. Okay. And which is a dog, by the way, named Taco. And so it just was not working for me anymore. And so what happened was I literally got on Google and I searched project management tools. And this is like late 2018, maybe early 2019. It was around Christmas. And Notion came up as an ad on Google. And I was like, oh, what's Notion? Right? Like, this is interesting. And I think it was like the logo that caught me. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And so in a weekend, completely ditched Trello, walked away from it all, built my first dashboard, learned Notion, went on my way. And from there, I put out a video on my channel after using Notion for a little while, put out a video on my channel of how I use Notion to run my design business. And you can literally still go watch that video. It is so embarrassing. Let me pull it up. I'm going to pull it up because I want to tell y'all. So I posted that video 3 years ago. It's now titled How I Run and Organize My Business with Notion, a setup tour. Okay. So 3 years ago. So I had been using Notion for a good year before I posted this video. And it's like me in the pitch black of our apartment. Our old apartment was like Jesse's and I's first apartment together. And just this massive ring light on me. And it's just so embarrassing, but it's got 21,000 views on it, which like go me. So I post this video and immediately like the fire started. Okay. And when I say that, I was really the first designer to publicly talk about using Notion. You've got to remember, like, this is pre-eSlow. This is before the like big boom of Notion. Okay. Like, no one was really using it. I didn't even know who like Marie Poulin was. I didn't really know who August Bradley was. Like, I never looked at Notion content myself, but I knew like, oh, my neurodivergency, like and of course that word didn't exist then either, like in my vocabulary, but I knew like, holy shit, like I could build this exactly how I need it. And like, chances are other designers need this too, because Honeybook didn't work for me at the time. Trello wasn't working for me at the time. I think I also tried Basecamp maybe, and like one other one, and they were just so limiting. And so for me, I was like, whoa, this is the first open box software, which I can build exactly what I need, but I don't have to code it. Right. And I came from the world where I had to learn SQL, and like we built databases for this nonprofit. Like literally, we were living out of filing cabinets. So that was the extreme side. And so when I found Notion, it was like, whoa, other people are going to need this too. Right. So I post this video, and it sat for a little bit. It was doing fairly well. Now, mind you, like my channel had changed so much over the years. I was the first person to make content about AmeriCorps that wasn't government media. I was the first AmeriCorps member to like talk about the stipend, to talk about how I moved cross country by myself at 18, like, and how I did that. Like I had all of that content. And then I went on to do the Disney college program. And so my entire channel was like Disney. And then I was in nonprofit and I was talking about nonprofits. So like to then pivot my channel again, I really wasn't like hoping for anything, to be honest. I was like, okay, if this video helps, like cool. So at that point, and this is where this pipeline I think really starts, is that I had a illustrator from Ireland reach out to me. She does incredible work, and she emailed me 6 or 7 times and was like, please build my Notion account. Like I found Notion, like you, I love it. And I'm like, bro, I make logos. Like I don't really know. Like I was heavily invested in design. I was like, that is my future. We all know how that turned out. And finally, I was like, you know what? Like, if this person on the other side of the world basically is reaching out and asking me for this, like, why not take the chance and see where it goes? And so, this is where our pipeline starts, is that I took a chance, and you guys are going to laugh at me. I think it's so funny, but I charged her $450 to build out her entire Notion workspace. And I was like, okay, I can take this and I'm going to turn it into templates, because the template gallery was like, it existed, but not the way that it does today. Okay. You got to think like this is like early 2021 at this point. Okay. Like over Christmas 2020. And actually, yeah, it was because I worked with her during South by, and South by was virtual. They had canceled it for 2020, and 2021 was online, and I was working on her project while I was like attending South by virtually. Anyway, so put together these templates for her, charged her $450. And I was in a design community at the time on Slack. And when it was done, I kind of like zhuzhed the templates a bit from what I built for her. But it was like a CRM, a marketing dashboard, a client portal, probably like meeting notes, like the bare foundational. And zhuzhed it. And I put it in this design community. I said, hey, I don't know if you guys have heard of Notion, but like I built this thing. I would love y'all's feedback on it. And like, here it is for free, right? I gave it to 10 people and it blew up. So through the 2.5 years that I sold it, I had 4,000 people access this bundle. And what I think is important to note is that this bundle was a direct response to a need in my space. I wasn't finding a new audience. I was literally attributing my skills to my peers rather than trying to land a client in a completely new space that like I had zero experience in. So I launched this bundle, and like I said, over the 2 years, it was like 4,000, maybe just like a little under, that either purchased it, got it for free, and went through it and purchased it. So at that point, I was selling it, I think, for like $47. I think at its height, I sold it for $147. And that was only because somebody pushed me to increase the price. And I was like, I don't know. So anyway, so I launched this template, and I did not have a funnel. I did not have any kind of anything attributed to it. Like I did like some training videos, but there was no scale up funnel. There was nothing, like no engagement funnel, nothing. It was like, here's this bundle, go on your way, bye-bye. And I started getting people reaching out saying, hey, this is great, but I'm brand new to Notion. I'm overwhelmed. Can you like basically customize these templates for me? And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that that was like a market that I could do that. Because again, you have to remember, I am fully designing at this point. Like I'm doing full social campaigns, full product launches, packaging. I mean, I'm doing the whole thing. And so I was like, yeah, I guess like I could do this and, take a couple clients on. It's extra money. Like it's already been built. Like, sure, I can just click duplicate and give you a couple hours of my time. So I ended up doing, I think, 5 clients like that. And the inquiries kept coming. And so I was like, okay, clearly something's here. Let me see what it would be like to do an engagement funnel. And so what I did was I built this sales funnel, if that's what you want to call it. It was literally one email. And so how the funnel worked is I did the delivery email that was like, here's your template, click here to duplicate, blah, 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 right? And then 3 days later, I would send an automated email in Flowdesk that said, hey, we've been hearing a lot that people are downloading this template for free. That are new users rather, if you need help with it, book us for $1,500 and we will customize, we'll do the data migration. And we meaning me, right? Like I've literally been on my own until this year. Never had help. So that was literally the email. And when I tell you that email converted at 30% was insane to me. And that carried me my first 8-9 months of Notion consulting, right? That was not a term. I didn't know anybody who was a Notion consultant. I literally did not know anybody who built or used Notion at this time. Like I had no clue. Okay. So that was converting really well. And so at that point, I then had a client. My first Notion project was this design agency out in San Francisco, give or take. They make like seating kits. So like if you go to like a basketball game and you get a free t-shirt, they're basically the ones that are creating all of that merchandise. So that's their model. And they emailed me and they were like, hey, we bought your template. We actually want like a fully custom Notion build. We just didn't know people did that. And so I was like, fuck yeah, like, let's go, bro. Like, let's do this. And I charged them, I think 3,500 or 4,000, give or take, and custom built their workspace. And we did Team Spaces, I think, had like just dropped in like the way that they are today. And so we built different team spaces for all of their departments. We built out like databases and dashboards and like employee portals and like all of this stuff, right? Like looking back at that project, I definitely would have charged like 10K for that project. But it was a complete eye opener of like, oh, I can do this. I can do this. Like this is a whole different world for me. So, all that to say, so that was literally my funnel. And from there, I started then getting feedback from, uh, I started getting feedback from users who were buying this template that were saying, hey, this is great, but like, I don't need XYZ. I'm happy to pay, the $60, because at that point it was probably 67, because that's where I landed for a long time. I'm happy to pay the $60 to get these 3 pieces, but it's a little overwhelming because there's so much more in it. And so I took that feedback and I ended up redesigning this bundle. I also like at that point, had done so much Notion build and like I was starting to shift my audience and, different things. And so I took all that feedback and completely dismantled Notion for Designers, which if I didn't mention, that's what it was called, and built a plug and play model. And it was the first template subscription that anyone had done on Notion before. And basically it was a plug and play. So you got access to this massive library of like 50, 60 some odd templates. And basically what I did was like, oh, you want this template where it works really well with this other template, and basically guided people to building their own operating system, so to speak, and plugging in all of the different templates that they needed. And I think I sold it for like $247 for the year. I never renewed anybody. So this is also a piece of the puzzle that I think is really important, is that when you are considering creating products or creating client offers based on content, based on, you're starting at a low and you're moving to the high, is really looking at the data to say, yeah, I can do this, but is it worth it? Right. So I launched the subscription and it was fairly successful. But it didn't drive the wow factor like I feel like Notion for Designers did. And I definitely was not interested in maintaining it. So I really like didn't market it, didn't do anything, and just kind of let it sit. And like if it sold, it sold. Like it is what it is. But then I was like, I don't want to be in the business of updating templates. I need something that is simple again, that brings people into the higher ticket, not sustaining them at a lower ticket model. So I completely shut that down and I said, look, if I'm going to do Notion templates again, like I need to be invested in them, right? So that was really how I got started. And what I ended up doing was I ended up internalizing all of these templates and creating my own operating system internally for clients that would hire me. So very similarly like to how I did web design on Squarespace is that I had different wireframes based on the audience. And I would just duplicate that Squarespace template for myself and then build on top of it. And so that's really kind of where I pulled all this down and then created my internal system. And so all of that to say, I think, you guys know, I love giving you context. I love giving you transparency. And I think that it's important. But what I realized in this is one, I think, and I say all this to say is I talked about this. I recorded a podcast with a friend yesterday, and this was brought up in the call. And I think, Notion for Designers was a lightning in a bottle. I think that, I just we didn't even talk about me becoming a consultant at that point. Okay. I'm going to put a pin in that thought and I will come back to it. So I was selling Notion for Designers for 8 months, and Notion came to me in November of 2021 and said, hey, we have this consulting program. You should go through it. And I'm like, I guess it's free. Like, why not? Right? Like, what do I have to lose? And I was like, and also that would kind of give me a leg up for people who are hiring me to be like, oh, well, I'm certified. Like, I can charge whatever the fuck I want to charge. And so I was like, okay, what do I have to lose? Right. But the downside to that is that, and I think it's still the same right now, but the program's kind of shifting a little bit for qualification. But at the time, in order to apply to become a certified consultant, you had to have 3 portfolio pieces that were not your own build. You had to have like all this public engagement. And I had none of that because if you remember, I was literally just customizing the templates that I was selling. I had only done one client project at that time that was truly qualifiable for the program. And so I worked really hard to find a couple people to do like custom builds. And one of those I did the design agency. I worked with a guy who how do I explain this without it being like super confusing? He worked for a company that did windmill repair. So like it was like kind of like a government department, but he would basically like send his technicians out and they would repair the wind turbines. And so I built like an employee tracker for him. And then I did I think it was like an artist or something needed tracking in Notion. I don't know why that's blurry for me. I know they were an artist, but I think I'm thinking of a website. Anyway, all that to be said, it was an artist. So those were my 3 projects. So by February, I was like good to go, rock and rolling. We were going to apply to this. And so that was like, okay, cool. Like I'm going to get certified. That's like the next level in this pipeline, right? So go through the program, get certified. And I got certified the week before Block by Block when the Essentials badge got launched. So that was like my timeline. So all that to say, I think going back to that thought, I think that Notion for Designers was a lightning in the bottle. I don't think that you could easily replicate that today in Notion. I think that there's still some possibility that you can do that. And I say that because I'm going to tell you about my new pipeline, what I've been doing for a while that works really well. So I think you could definitely have a content to consultant pipeline. I think you can do creator to client pipeline, whichever phrase you want to use. But I don't think that I would be successful doing what I did today because it's been done. I think, blowing up the way that Notion's blown up, the way that, different platforms outside of Notion have blown up, right? I know several people who've done this on the ClickUp side. I think even thinking about creators in the space today that are launching these massive bundles, they aren't offering one-off support. They're not offering customization. I know that because people who are buying their templates are coming to me to fix them and to improve them. That's a story for another day. But I think in your business, you need to find something that is easily showcaseable of your skills, engages people, but then is a clear path to working with you. I don't think just sharing an email for like 5 tips of how to do X is going to do that. I think you really need to be strategic. And I say that because my now pipeline that I've been using for I think like a year, because I took all my Notion templates down, I think the beginning of last year, like spring maybe, I think. Yeah, because I hadn't rebranded yet. I wasn't systems yet, and that was last April. So yeah, I had to have shut it all down around that time. So anyway, so when I shifted more into ops and not just Notion, I really sat and, really thought about like, well, what could engage people to trust me, to see my expertise, but to also be, it's kind of funny. I say this, but hopefully you understand what I mean, is jargony enough to make the person not want to do the work. Okay. And I say that because you want to give them enough, but also at the same time, overwhelm them enough to want to work with you. Right. And so, what I mean by that is I have my workbook. If you go to my website under Learn, it's literally called the Workbook. And, um, and so I have that as my download, and I have so many strategic questions in there that you should then be saying, oh, I need help, right? I haven't thought about that yet. How do I think about those things, right? And that then funnels into working me one-on-one. But specific content around that is asking the bigger questions, making people really think, oh, could I do this? Could I achieve XYZ? Something I've really tried to change in my content specifically for this is creating content around what if instead of how to. And I don't know if you guys have noticed that in my content, but I don't do tutorials anymore. I don't, really sometimes I talk about how to, like for instance, like I'm just thinking about when I shared about like the more better new concept on my content like 2 weeks ago, about this practice that I have, that's obviously like an easy how to because I don't want to get hired for that. And so that's really been my strategy now is what can I create that makes people think what if I want to work with them one-on-one. But if I don't, that's when I share the how to. So I'm curious if you guys have noticed that in my content because I've been trying to make a conscious effort. So the other piece of this, yeah, so let's just like finish that thought. So creating a lower ticket product that make people want to work with you. So my workbook, for instance, when we relaunched systems earlier this year with like the updated branding and the website and all of that, it wasn't even earlier this year, it was like 2 months ago. Y'all, it's been a year. I specifically wrote all of my copy, designed the website to attribute to working with teams. I really didn't want to always be working with solopreneurs. I wanted to be doing department-esque work, working with larger teams. And so with this workbook, I designed it to be for teams. However, one of the things that I also noticed about my audience and I recognize is I have so many freelancers and solopreneurs. And when I say solopreneurs, I'm also including the people who are me plus a contractor, me plus a part-time VA, right? You're still a team of one because you have one employee. So that's what I mean when I say that. And so I knew that when I launched this, solopreneurs who actually still wanted to work with me were going to reach out and be like, hey, do you still work with solopreneurs? I knew that that was going to happen because my audience is so heavy on the solopreneur side. And so I knew that's what was going to happen, and it did happen. And so this workbook, I launched it. I was always giving this to clients as like basically their questionnaire to start working with me. Um, but I never allowed people to download it. And so when I made that conscious effort to say, I'm going to make this public, I knew I was going to get those questions. So when I launched it, I was for like a month, every time someone downloaded it, I was manually sending an email and saying, "Hey, I saw you downloaded my workbook. Would love to answer any questions that you have. Here's a link to a free 15-minute call," right? Because I'm really good. When I get somebody on a call, I can convert them. I'm really good at connecting with people. And so that happened, and I had 3 solopreneurs that I was like, "Oh, these are the solopreneurs I want to work with," right? And they responded back to the email, "I don't know if you still work with solopreneurs, but I really need your help. I would love your expertise." And it's like, fuck yeah. Like these are the people I want to work with. And so that worked for me. But then I was getting so many people too who were downloading the workbook and being like, "I don't need XYZ in this because I'm a solopreneur." So again, looking at that data and saying, how can I change this up to better fit my consultant pipeline, right? And so what I ended up doing about 2 weeks ago is I made a secondary version of the workbook. And so when you download it, it gives you the option to duplicate it for teams or duplicate it for solos. And now I have a funnel that goes in just automatically emailing people to be like, "Hey, book a call with me." And that has been working like hotcakes. So within that, I then create content talking about those projects, right? So a great example, I had a client not too long ago who downloaded the workbook and then emailed me and said, "Hey, I have this automation project that I need help with." And they reached out, sent me kind of the details, and I was like, "Oh, hell yeah. Like this is an easy day project. I can get it to you in 48 hours." And so thinking about not always your top offer, but creating the content and creating sorry, my brain just froze. Lead magnets, etc., that can also attribute to lower ticket offers like a paid call or like a half day's worth of work, a couple hours that you invoice for, right? It doesn't always have to be your top tier offer. And I think that when you're creating a lower ticket thing, using that as cash injection it's like girl math. It's free money to me, right? Like the workbook specifically, just on the free money side, like the low earned money, since I launched the solo version of the workbook, I've made about 15 grand in just odd and end jobs, but I've also converted 20 grand worth of top tier projects. And so you really have to think about not why am I launching this low ticket? Why am I launching this template, whatever, but like, where is it going to take me? How is it going to drive the needle forward in my business? That is always something you should be thinking about. So to go back to that piece of content, I had somebody else who reached out that was like, "Hey, I'm new to Notion. I've spent hours on YouTube. I'm so overwhelmed. All I need is like a simple database and like an hour of training." And so I was like, "Hell yeah, happy to do that for you." And so what I ended up doing was, did the work. I asked them for a testimonial, which I'm really bad at. If they don't go through my normal funnel, they don't get like the offboarding email. And I'm really bad with hourly calls asking for feedback after, which I've since fixed. We can talk about that another day, that funnel. But I got a really great testimonial from this guy. And so I posted it on LinkedIn and I was like, "Look, like here was the problem. Here was the solution. Here's the testimonial." And underneath, I put just like, "If you want this type of transformation, like book an hourly call with me." And it landed me 3 hourly consulting clients. And so that's, I think, a piece of the content pipeline, specifically attributing content to your work. And so one thing, since this clearly has worked, one thing that I'm doing now is that every Friday, I am sitting and for an hour in the morning and doing what I call post project content creation. And so I am sitting with any project that ended that week. So if I didn't have a project end, then obviously I don't need to necessarily sit in that hour. I could if I wanted to, but I literally sit with the projects that I did and say, what kind of content can I create off of this? How can I drive this? Or if it was a project that I either can't talk about or can't share, or I don't want to, then you just don't talk about it. So for instance, I also just put out a blog post. And I emailed it to my newsletter, put it on the website about how I created a content flywheel in Notion for production, like a podcast production. And I've been getting so many production projects, like literally like this, like helping people track their production that I've never told people like this is the type of work that I do. But I was like, you know what? Let's just like talk about it and see how it goes. And so if you guys notice, like, unless it is like I have like two content buckets. One, personal workflows. Two, does it serve to get me clients? I don't talk about anything else because for me, what I've learned over the last 6 years is like, it's all noise. The rest of it is noise. I don't create content to teach other people how to do what I do. Like that's a paid course in my opinion. I don't create content with memes. I don't create content that's trending. Like it's literally I am creating this because I want you to become my client. I want you to think differently. Or I'm sharing personal experience because I do work for myself and every day is a winding road, like our queen Sheryl Crow used to say. Okay, so Kyrie asked, can you give more examples of the type of content of giving people a clear path to working with you? Okay, so I feel like I just did that, but I think I didn't see this comment before I shared it all. But yeah, so thinking about that, and let me pull it up because I think that it's always nice to speak specifics. So, for instance, let's see. Okay, so like a great example of like getting people to work with me that's like super simple. Yesterday, I posted my current client roster. So I have a fractional CFO who does CPG brands. I'm working with a remodel slash handyman construction business. I'm working with a female led community. I'm working with a company that does cabin rentals in the Smoky Mountains. They're also launching a laundromat. So they're like two separate businesses. And then I'm also getting back into in-person events full time as like my other business now, which I haven't really talked about. So surprise, I am back doing conferences and summits full time. Shout out Justin Moore and Creator Wizard because I'm producing his event for the spring. And then I literally said like, could be you. And I had one DM being like, hey, do you have capacity for this project? And I have a sales call with them tomorrow. So I think even things like that, like being so direct and specific of like, it's not desperate. You're not being like, my books are open, which just like really gives me the ick. I don't like when people use marketing like that, but to specifically say like, these are the type of people I work with. If that vibes with you, like reach out to me, right? So that's another one. Another great example, yeah, building the content flywheel. So that was, hey, haven't shared about a Notion project in a while. Like, let me show you something I'm building. But I wrote that article because like if you want to hire me, cool. If not, like literally here's how I built it and just take it. And I'm like not going to take offense to that. So I think you can also, again, like, why am I creating this content? What is this pushing me towards in terms of client work? Because why post content if you don't actually want to be hired for that? And I'm going to tell you that example in a second. So I also just want to make sure I'm reading the comments. Kyrie also said, how SEO, basically, like what if content allows you to become a better storyteller and engage with your community more? I literally don't care about SEO. I don't understand it. I've never had a bone in my body that wants to learn SEO. I think I'm in also a very fortunate situation that I joined the Notion space very early on and it naturally works for me. So I've heard from a couple of local clients, like they Googled Notion expert Austin and I come up because I'm the only one in Austin. And so like for me, I also have the Notion directory. I have a couple of other directories I'm in. I also have built very specifically clear relationships with the tools I build on, and their customer support teams ship me clients. So I don't really care about SEO. And I know that like that is not normal. Like that's not applicable feedback to a lot of people. Like that's just not possible for a lot of people. But I genuinely can't speak to SEO because I don't know what that means. Like I have no idea how to rank. I don't write blog posts for that reason. Like if you guys follow me on Medium, like, you know, I just post to post. Like I post the shit that like sounds good, right? And literally, honestly, this is also the other thing we should talk about too in this pipeline is that My Medium posts slash newsletter now, because I brought my newsletter back. If you didn't know, I completely wiped give or take 4,000 people off of my email list and shut it all down a couple of months ago. No fucks. I did not care. And so I'm starting from scratch. And I think I've got 100, I think it's like 135 people on the list. Like, it's very humbling. I love it. So I literally script all of my videos and then I clean them up and I post them on Medium. Like, that's what I'm doing. I'm not doing anything or like a LinkedIn article. Couldn't tell you how to SEO drive those. Couldn't tell you. But I do think being, you know, transparent, you guys know, like, I'm an open book. You could literally ask me anything and I will tell you, as long as it's respectful and productive. Although I do love to shit talk. Let's just be honest here. I'm a shit talker and I love it. But I do it in a respectful manner. I don't name drop, but I do talk to situations. So, I think that naturally drives engagement with my audience. And I think, I've always been very um focused on quality over quantity. I've never been one to be like, "Oh my god, I've got to post every day." I've never been like, "Oh my god, I just have to post what's trending and hope that it works." Like, I don't give a shit about virality. Like, clearly you guys know I've been on YouTube for 11 years and I'm barely about to hit 4K subs. Like, I don't care. I do this because I enjoy the content production process more than anything. But that means, though, when I do post, I am very clear. So one thing also that I want to talk about is that something that's been oddly working for me the last couple of weeks is, I'm really pushing this workbook, because I know it's converting. It's converting at, where am I at? I just did these numbers like a week ago, so they may change. I'm converting it at 27% right now. So that means that 27% of people downloading this free workbook have become a client in either hourly consulting, small project, meaning like an automation workflow, right? Like a small build, Notion training, or a large project. And so it's been my goal to increase that number, obviously. And you're always going to have people that are just genuinely curious when it comes to freebies, but I'm really proud that it's converting well. And so what I've been doing is testing it as running my own ad for myself. So if you go back to the last couple of my videos, at the end of the video, it's literally an ad that's like, "Oh, hey, did you know that it costs $0 to create efficiency in your business? Download this workbook." I've published it as content on other places a few different times. It's also at the end of every Medium article. I'm also thinking about, like, I just got access to this code on Squarespace that like lets you basically input an ad into your blog posts. And so, or like whatever content you want. And so I'm going to test that too now that I'm posting on the blog again. But that seems to be working really well for me too. And so again, how can you move the needle, right? I don't think you always need to create super custom content, but like do it well. What was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, we were going to talk about, okay. So one thing that I want to talk about is with your clients, you don't have to post everything. And I think being specific about what you post, again, do you want this project? So I am under negotiation actually with a client who I should be getting their contract like any minute. I have been in conversation with them since November of last year. And it is a project where I'm like genuinely excited to work with them, but it's been a struggle to get them onboarded. And it's not a project that I don't see right now wanting to be hired for in the future unless it goes well and I can figure out how to like do it really well. And I'm being really vague because I did agree. This is the next piece. I agreed to an NDA with them, which NDA in the sense that I am not allowed to showcase it in my portfolio. I'm not allowed to mention their company name. And the last couple of like posts I've done on client work, I've actually not mentioned the client. I've been really mindful about like blurring screenshots, but even that, I was like, I can't even do that with this project. And I'm okay with that. And so I think that's kind of the other thing is being like doing a review of all of your past clients to say, do I want more of this work? Am I okay not sharing this work? Is it going to benefit me if I show this work? Right. And being able to be like, it's okay to not put everything in my portfolio. Like it's not even like, do I have the capacity to update my portfolio? Because we all know none of us do. But it's literally like, will this benefit my portfolio? Probably not. And why I say that about this client, I'm excited for the project because I haven't done this in a while. And the last couple of people that reached out about it ended up not converting, which is totally fine. But I'm also like, it's okay that it's not in there, right? So those are some things I would think about too. So when you're thinking about your content to consultant pipeline, I think another thing to think about is like, where do you want to sit in the void, right? And this goes back to kind of the how to versus the what if, right? And like selling transformation is when you're creating content. And this is something I feel very deeply about. And this is just my own personal opinion. You can do whatever you want. I don't really care. um, I don't compete with people for views when features drop. So this is like a specific Notion thing, not any of the other tools that I am a consultant and expert on. You will never catch me posting a video about a new feature dropping. I have zero interest in doing that because they don't convert. They are just talking points. They're not, I mean, I guess you could maybe create content in a way that like engages people, but like I'd rather get clients in different ways. And so what I ended up doing, this is kind of the next level of my pipeline, because you guys know I'm not selling templates anymore. I have one, which is my financial tracker, but I haven't taken it down because I did a whole video on it. The video is doing really well. So I get the $15 every sale and I don't really care. That's the only template I have. So to go back to like creating content around drops, right? Like we think about Notion charts dropping. There's a lot of other things that are dropping where I'm like, yeah, I could get hired for that. But I also don't want to be inundated with people who just want that feature done. Like I'd rather do a full build. So what I am working on and what I'm launching, if you guys caught my live stream, I think 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, is that I'm working on a resource hub and it's going to be $8 a month. You can literally buy it now and get access to what's already done in there. 96 for the year, $8 for the month. And, you know, I'm building it as time goes on, but I was like, let's just like launch this and people can get frameworks and things. And as things launch, that kind of keeps them engaged instead of like spending months and months and months developing everything and then dropping it. So that's kind of the other piece of this is that, you know, you can launch things without them being fully done. And I'm not talking pre-order, but like, what are little nuggets that you can drop along the way to keep people engaged with you? And so in this resource hub, what I'm doing is I'm creating mini courses for every tool that I use and trust and would give to a client. And then when new features drop, I will create content specifically inside this hub to say, hey, this is how you can use this with your current workspace. And I already do that with my clients where if something big drops, I will email them personally and be like, hey, this new feature just came out. Based on what we did together, I think it would really benefit you, right? So with like Notion charts, for instance, like I get so many clients who want charts for their data and you know, you always have to have a separate tool. Well, now I can be like, okay, here, like this, you click here, create a chart view, you click here to customize it and use your charts. Like I don't need to be hired for that, but I do need to still stay the expert and lead the charge in using the new feature. And so this resource hub is going to be that place to do that. So all clients are getting lifetime access to it, but then outside people, if you want to DIY your stuff, if you want to enter my ecosphere, you're testing new tech, whatever, like this is your way to do it. But again, going back to the very beginning, I'm making it easy enough to do yourself, but also jargony enough to make you want to hire me, right? So if you get in here and let's say, one of the frameworks is like streamlining your processes and it's my audit guide basically. And so I have it in there like, hey, you know, if you need second eyes on this, like book an hourly call with me, like all very low ticket commitment. If you want a full workspace, like there's enough in there to realize like Sara is the right hire to get this done. So all of my content in that pipeline, once I feel confident enough to start marketing the resource hub, which again, you can literally buy today. And I think, let me see, let's count how many frameworks are in here. So under the operational guide, actually, you know what I'll do? I'll just screen share and I'll show you guys so you can get a little insight. Um, let's do, I guess, entire screen. Okay, so hopefully you can see the resource hub. So when you buy in, you basically get access to this space, right? So on the left-hand side, there's different guides. So the operational guides, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Basically like 9 framework mini sods that you can take and start improving your business. Then the tech guides are all coming. So I'm breaking these out, all of these guides and courses by these different areas. So AI note taking, communication, client, CRM, project management, all that good stuff. And then when you come in here, then there's courses on different tech. You get access also to my tech stack wiki, which I've been building for forever, that allows you to look at literally any tool and you can cross compare their main features, if they have API, what their monthly plans are, and then like what I would rate that tool as well, to kind of get my insight. So all of that's in there. And I'm working through launching the courses. And then there's also the automation guide. So intro to automation, Zapier, you get access to my automation wiki, all that good stuff. So when I feel confident enough to launch this, which I think will be in 2 weeks, all of my content is basically going to be these like super interesting mini concepts for each of these. Yeah. So like if you see this, like to perfect your digital apps, like hire us, and it just goes to my intro call booking. And so my content to client, oh, that's weird how it's doing that view. Sorry, wanted to check this. So my content to client consult. Oh my God, this pipeline name is the fucking worst. My framework mindset here is that I'm going to create one piece of content for every single one of these. And so kind of like similarly how I block 1 hour a week on Fridays to do content for each project, I'm going to sit and do an hour for each of these to say, okay, intro to knowledge hubs, right? Building a knowledge hub. What is the what if of this? Like, why should people give a shit about how they structure a wiki and document, like what tools they should use, how they should, I mean, this is like insane, the amount of work that's in here. How to verify, how to migrate, what's the good process? Like, what if you migrated to a better wiki system? Would your team stop institutionalizing knowledge? Would they be willing to document SOPs? And so all of that, yeah, I literally have a call to action at the bottom of every article that's like, if you need help with this specific thing, like hire us. And so, yeah, so that's my pipeline framework here. And what I'm hoping to accomplish is literally having very specific projects, even if that means that they're one off. Like I get asked all the time, like file naming. Okay, I'll write a little thing about file naming. It's not a big a deal, right? And so taking all of your institutional knowledge that you've picked up over projects is the easiest way. I don't know how I stop screen sharing this. Stop screen. There we go. Is literally the easiest way to create content that's going to drive future work. It's not, oh, I turned down I see these fucking tweets all the time where people are like, oh, I turned down a project because they didn't pay enough or they weren't this. Like, you should be treating the single dollar signs and the $5 signs the exact same, because every single thing is a new skill set and a new experience for your consultant, freelancer, whatever word you want to use, your ecosystem. And so that's what I would really recommend to kind of close this rant out, if you will, is that you really just need to be really open and mindful of how you show up and what you want to show up with in the future. And I think that sometimes, like, because I know a lot of people in my audience are still designers, or not still, but like are designers, right? And like you're doing websites or you're doing this. And I think that sometimes like that kind of content is hard, right? Like you're just getting hired to build a website. Like, how do you really engage clients? But what I would say in that space is like, think about how you're improving conversion. Think about how like how you're engaging, like creating the differences in the old website versus the new. It's not about the design aesthetic, but it's really like, what is the possibility that was made real based on this project? And whether that's you creating a low ticket offer like I did and letting that really honestly like dictate your work for just like ride the wave. I think that, let's just talk about this for a second, because now I'm like on my soapbox. So bear with me. One of the things that has always really pissed me off about my, I guess, my journey, or like what the outside looks like, is that people think that I pivot all the time. And I really don't. I do a lot of stuff on the back end that I'm beta testing and trying before I show up publicly with it. And I think that when you are doing reviews on your projects, or you're testing something because you just happen to make it, and if it's working for you, then allow yourself to show up or like fully pivot, right? Like if I look back at like my design business and then pivoting into Notion / back into operations, because I think a lot of people also forget that like I did operations for almost 10 years. Because I just never really talk about my nonprofit time because it was so traumatic, and I spent years in therapy trying to get over my first real job because it broke my heart in ways that like I didn't know your heart could break based on your career. And like I know everyone says, like your life shouldn't be your career, but like I fucking loved my job. Still to this day love that organization. It just was like really bad infrastructure. So anyway, no one I don't think realizes like that was my life. That was my career. I just happened to like pivot a little bit into design because I didn't know I could freelance and do operations, right? So I'm technically like pivoting backwards. But like creating the templates and shifting and all of those things, like I literally would launch based on data I was getting. I wasn't just like up and launching something, or up and getting rid of something. It was literally based on the majority of data. And I think like in my experience, that is what you need to do too. And if so, you're creating content, if it's not working, like do different shit. Who cares? Like I look at LinkedIn, y'all. I look at those fucking um what are these things that are like trending? They're like the ugliest designed infographics that I've ever seen in my life. Everyone is making them. I don't even want to read it. I don't want to look at them. They hurt my eyes. So like don't make them. I don't make them. I don't look at them. It's not content that I care to intake because I think it's so messy and I don't understand them. But I think that's like the whole point, right? Is like don't just do something because the majority is doing it. Look at your data and say, hey, let's create it based on this, or hey, let's do this. And I think you can create so many different things. I also think like there's a lot of bad advice on like create a course, create this. Like, no, you don't need to do that, but you can create things that are still supportive. Like, not everyone needs a community. I also taught K-5. I taught adult workforce. Like, I would never just up and tell somebody to launch a course because there's so much that goes into teaching methods that would make you successful, but people don't want to know that stuff. They don't want to intake that kind of content. It's not sexy. It doesn't sell. But if you can create things that are specifically attributed to your audience that you want, okay? And I'm not talking about followers. I'm literally talking about people who are paying your bills and giving you money. Then follow that train, right? That's all you need to do. And also too, if like people are asking for, this is the other thing that goes back to like public versus private with the pivot, is like, I think back to that woman who hired me for the Notion stuff that turned into my Notion career, is like, I would never publicly post like I'm looking for Notion clients if I've never had a Notion client before, right? Like I remember being like, I have no idea what to charge for any of this work. Like I just know how to charge a website. Like I have no idea. And there was no education back then on those prices either. Like I did not know a single person who was a low code consultant. And so doing at least what allows you to want to wake up and work on it and also feels, good in your gut is more than enough. You don't need to like launch a sales page, do all these things. Just like go with it. Make sure, be clear, like, hey, this is a new offer for me. Happy to explore it, but like, just so you know, like bear with me, right? You don't need to have all of your ducks in a row to make that happen. But I think if once you're done with it and it works and you're happy, then create the content around it. Okay, I'm gonna get off my soapbox. I'm so sorry. I'm really not, because I feel like sometimes I have to be the big bad older sister, and I hope that I come across still giving you information and insight that you need and you want, and you like it. Also, like, my hair looks so nasty, y'all. Um Anywho, okay. I hope this was helpful. Hopefully it was. Let me know what questions you have. As always, I am an open book. I'm happy to voice note and chat back. And if there's things that you're thinking about, like, could I launch this? Does this make sense for a low ticket or a high ticket or whatever? Ship me the info. I'm happy to beta test. I'm happy to look at it. And I'm happy to give you like really honest feedback that I think a lot of people don't want to, because they don't want to hurt other people's feelings. And I am emotionless. So I'm just kidding. I'm really not. You guys know I'm not. Um, but I want you to be successful, because I think with so many people online, it's really easy to get discouraged of like, is this working? Is it not? Um, and I think I will say this as like the final thought. If you are actively choosing to do client work, because I think that there's a very large narrative out there that's like, don't do client work. You are worthless if you do client work, which is like not the case. I love my clients. It took me 6 years of trying and tribulating to get to a point where I'm proud of my client roster, that I'm excited for my client roster, that I wake up and I'm like, fuck yeah, I work on some dope stuff. It took me a very long time to get here. And prices had nothing to do with it. Okay. Nothing to do with it, because I was literally taking anything and everything, because I was living this like referral wave. I was riding the wave where I was like, okay, I have to be grateful and I have to take this project, because I didn't do the work to get them. And I think I'm in a position now where it's like, oh, I can have just a little more control of what my inbound looks like. I can have a little more control over quality and what comes in. And then not feel like I have to say yes to a project because I didn't work to get it. And I think that when you are adamantly working on your pipeline, you have full control of that, right? Like, yeah, you're still going to get leads that like don't really work for you, but that's when your leadership shows up and you have people that you can offload those projects to that you know would be a better fit. Where was I going with that thought? Oh, but that, yeah, like so many people are like, you are worthless if you take client work, and you need to diversify and you need to have digital projects. And I don't think you do. I think if you genuinely like your client work, if you're getting that momentum and you're in a position like me where you're like, whoa, like I wake up and I'm excited. Y'all, okay, my friends here in Austin that are, constantly see me. I think Hector might still be in this live stream. I see him at like every other event that I go to. He's one of my favorite humans now in the world. But like he knows, like I brag about my clients. Like if I'm at an event or if I am talking to other people, I am always talking about my clients and what they're working on. And that's the place that I want to be and why I still do client work. But what can I sell slash create that keeps that momentum going? And so if you're in that position and you're thinking like, yeah, I still want to do client work. Like it's good money. It's easy. I can have 1 to 2 clients a month or whatever your goals are, right? Like let that be just a little easier for you and drown out all the noise and the bullshit that everyone else is saying, because so many people too. Okay, one final more thought, I promise. I have been in 3 for sure conversations, probably more, where with people who are teaching people about client work and or teaching you how to leave client work that haven't done client work in years and are like, it's so easy to just do content full time. Like, I think it's all bullshit. And so again, if you want to ignore all those people like I do, you really just have to sit down and look at the projects you've done, y'all, even if a project was like 2 years ago, create content on it. You don't have to like name drop the client. Like I try to not name drop the client unless like we're really tight and I can tag them and I know that they're going to engage in the content. Other than that, I don't stress about it. Like I just talked about that content flywheel. I didn't have to not say who the client was, but like I just didn't mention them. And it's not that big of a deal. And so you can go back as far as you want. Even if you have like a one-off project and you're like, whoa, I want to do more of that, talk about it. No, don't be afraid to be like, oh, I did this 2 years ago. Just be like, yo, I worked with this client. It was fucking awesome. So all that to be said, I hope you enjoyed this talk and this chitty chat. I want to do more of them. So if you have, oh, there's like, I just got this bottle, which I love. It's the cutest little bottle and it's my brand color and I'm just obsessed with it, but I just got it all dirty. That to be said, I want to do more of these chit chats. I would love to do like coffee and chat once a week or every 2 weeks on a very specific topic that you are looking for, or like war stories. I think I'm in a place where there's like a couple war stories I'm more than happy to talk about and like how I changed my processes based on them. I don't know why my eyes got so big for saying. Anyway, yeah. So like I was recording this podcast episode yesterday and I specifically talked about how I freelanced for a year and a half before I got my LLC. And what made me get my LLC is that I had a client who legally ran my credit report and threatened legal action against me. And you know how you change your processes based on that. So I'm like, okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the time I got sued and like really talk about what if I didn't change my processes? How would this affect me? And like what happened because Sara became an asshole and put her boundaries up. So if there's anything specific you want to pick my brain about or you want more insight on, please let me know. DM me, friend me on LinkedIn, or if that is that what people say? Is that what the kids are calling it these days? Connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, send me an email, and I am always happy to create content about it. Oh, hey, did you know that it costs $0 to create efficiency in your business? Go to the description down below and download my free workbook to see how you can start working better.